What scenario do you want to start with? Like deer, duck?
Let's go to ducks.
Okay.
I got ducks on the brain.
Yeah, let's talk about waterfowl mainly, but some of this does cross over, so I'll fill in some gaps with the.
You want to give like a scenario, like kind of why
we
I
have
brought
two scenarios. I could do my brother's one that I talked to you
the deer
about,
or the duck?
The deer one.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Well,
but you could talk about.
What brought this up was I went out Saturday opening for Northland, Missouri, and you can imagine opening day on a public land place. You can just imagine what happens there. But I think if more people understood like some etiquette to the public marshes, things would go a lot better. What we had was multiple waves of people getting to a public marsh during the opening day. We had the core group, I would call them, that would get the appropriate time for opening day, or just appropriate time in general. I think, it wasn't too early. We didn't get there at midnight and, camp out, I've done before, but it was the appropriate time to arrive. Everybody, the three parties kind of got together. We all had the spots picked out. We all had the perfect distance, what we all liked. We felt good. Hour later, maybe, that was probably an hour later, a new wave comes.
The guys who didn't draw in.
The guys who didn't maybe get drawn in at a certain place, or they're just a little bit late to getting out or whatever.
Yeah.
They
happens.
still were well before shooting light, but they were just later to the party. Well, what they do is they come in and they start filling in between your gaps.
Yeah.
And, of course, here's the spotlights. Everybody's flying around spotlighting each other because they're starting to try to squeeze in between these gaps here, and they're getting into unsafe, I would say, in some places that are a little bit issues, and I'll get to that in a second. And then there's a third wave that shows up 15 minutes before shooting light and try to walk out, and then at that time no one has their headlamp on. Now headlamps start popping up everywhere, and they don't know where to go. They end up having to walk out.
Like a bunch of meerkats popping up out there.
when you walk in with shooting lights like 5 minutes ready, and you see them trying to walk out with
Slip
a
in
headlamp,
at like 9:30, 10 o'clock.
and then all of a sudden one headlight pops on, another headlight pops on, and then they're like, well, they can't go anywhere. They thought they had a spot, but they didn't know that there's hunters already there.
Yeah.
So it kind of ruined their morning. I think they found a place to hunt, but they were late to the game.
Happens to everybody.
Yep.
It happened to me before.
Just the biggest thing is get there early. That's what was, on that article you were reading, like a big thing is when you're hunting public, get there early. It gives everybody time to get set up and not ruin everything for everybody else.
Because then you can start figuring out your space. Yeah, those two kind of went together.
Well, there's another thing I'd like to touch on and stuff that I've done in the past is oftentimes when you get to the marsh at like an appropriate time, kind of the general, maybe 2 hours before shooting light, everybody's kind of at their trucks, getting everything ready. What I like to do is have conversations with those guys in the parking lot and say, all right, where are you guys planning to go? You got here a little bit before me. Where are you going? We'll figure this out.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And Brian Bartlett was saying the educated, the older hunter would like to get away from everybody.
Yes.
And a novice might not understand, how that works. But
yeah, I think that I put the show up early, like you guys are talking about, and the first come, first serve. Like it's not really like, oh, first come, first serve. You can't hunt on this lake. Not really saying that. You guys are just talking about like, one, show up early so you might be able to talk to people as they're offloading.
Yep.
So you're not walking in and then having to walk all the way back out because the spot you wanted to go to, there's someone already there and you're wasting time. And two, it gives you time to move around, set up decoys, see headlamps and lights moving. So showing up early, especially in waterfowl, there's just so much more to do, especially if you're putting in a boat or the long walks in, setting up decoys. So, yeah, and it happened. We've all done it where you hit the snooze or you accidentally turned off the alarm instead of hitting the snooze, and then pretty soon it's like, shoot, we're going to be cutting it close. You come in, it's like 30 minutes before shooting time. You start walking in, and there's people there. And so now, or you're coming in right at shooting time, which is like the perfect time, that first morning volleys, so you don't want to get into that.
Don't be walking in when it's shooting time. Like at shooting time, no. If you can't be set in your blind
You want to make
ready
sure.
to shoot the ducks that are coming into your spread
Yeah.
at legal light, don't even walk in
Like,
until
would
later.
you say, that's what I was going to ask you too, especially with waterfowl. Would you say then, hey, kind of cut your losses? One, try to find a plan B, or two,
Yes.
maybe you're already up, go get some breakfast, then come back out at lunch and set up for the
Dude,
evening time.
I'll tell you what, there's been so many times I'm hunting public and I get there, hunt the morning flight, but let's say I got 3 ducks, I want to finish out my 6. I'm just hanging out, chilling. That 11 o'clock to 2 o'clock time frame.
You letting out secrets?
Yeah, it's magical. Don't tell nobody.
Well, I mean, okay,
No.
I'll shut up.
No,
I'm kidding.
no, you're good.
No, we know what you're saying, though.
Just because shooting light, I think there's a common belief that duck hunting is best within the first 30 minutes of legal light.
Yeah.
Like that first,
That
'cause
first
that's when
30
you hear
minutes.
all the shots.
Yes. There's great duck hunting to be had after those first 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and I think the guys who didn't get the spot right off the bat went out after everybody was kind of heading out and limited out.
Well, what time were you leaving?
That might have been about 10:30.
Yep.
I mean, I wanted, we wanted to get out earlier because the guy I was hunting with had something to do. I wanted to work on the house. I wanted to have some more of my Saturday available because we were ways from the house. But yeah, I mean, I think those guys went back in at 10:30, and I bet you they shot more big ducks than I did. Well, I didn't shoot any big ducks. I shot all teal. But I think the bigger ducks were moving in and around those times. They're coming back to loaf. They were, I think, it's a good time
Yeah.
to be in the marsh.
Depending on what conservation areas you go to, if it's a conservation area like the lake or whatever,
Yeah.
a lot of times, whether this is deer or duck, that I wrote down, have a plan B. So I'll have 3 to 5 spots picked out, numbered. Okay, this is where I want to go
Yes.
first, and second, third, fourth, fifth, so on. So,
Great advice, Patrick.
but what I will do is I'll get out there plenty early, whether it's deer or duck. If I pull into one of the turnarounds where individuals would park to walk in, if there's 2 or 3 trucks there already, at least for me, I'm turning around and then I'm going to try my second spot.
Yeah.
Because one, you're going in the dark. Sometimes it can be a decent walk, and if there's already 2 or 3 trucks, the chances are they're going to be within a range where I don't want to set up anyways. And so why pack all that in? I'm going to go to the next one. Now, if it's just a truck, okay, you can figure that out. If you get maybe to the shoreline or whatever and he's there, you can move a safe distance away and set up, at least in the general area. But
Okay, well, what would you say is a safe distance?
That's what
we were talking about.
Are we about to get into this?
Oh, yeah.
So for me, and this is waterfowl, obviously.
Okay.
Strictly waterfowl. For me, I like 200 or more. 200 yards, not 200 feet. 200 yards. So one thing me and Chandler were discussing, let's say it's 100 yards. Football field, yeah, you just think I stand on one side, you stand on the other. Yeah, that's a decent area between you and me as hunters. But then what you got to think about is when you're working birds, it's not abnormal, like Chandler was saying, for you to work birds that are making swings at 50, 60 yards. So if you think of it that way, well, then that group of ducks or whatever is now only 50 yards between the hunters. So
I've
I
also
like to
had it
push it to
happen.
the 200.
I've also had it happen where like a group sets up close to me, like probably 100 yards or so. Like, we're probably in decent shape. We're not going to shoot each other or anything, but it's a little bit too close for comfort. And the ducks were so confused. They would just kind of circle
Might end
both
up hurting
spreads.
both of
It
you.
does hurt both parties.
Yeah, they
for
would.
the most part.
The ducks would just circle both spreads. None of them would really ever commit. They would just look at both spreads. They'd call, I'd call, they'd call, I'd call. The ducks would just bounce back and forth.
And that's
and then
another
just
thing.
leave.
So my issue or experience Saturday was 2 guys set up within 100 yards of us. One was 100 yards behind us, and then they had to shift over so they weren't just shooting at our backs. And then the other was 100 yards in front of us, in between us and one of the original guys who was there early. Like they come in and they slip in between your guys' distance, right?
Right.
And maybe they think they're all right and safe, but what happened Saturday is we would get a chance to work birds, but they were so close that they would shoot some of these birds on our swing. I would call it our swing. And the bird wasn't necessarily decoyed into their spread, but it flew, within their shotgun range.
Yes.
And they thought, hey, let's take a chance. Let's try
Exactly. There's a lot of let's take a chance because it swung into that range, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's why I like to push to the 200, because at 100, birds flying in between you two at an even distance, 50 yards, someone might take a chance at that. At 200 yards, you're not. If they're in between you, you're not taking a chance at a 100-yard shot.
You're not fighting over each other's swings.
Yeah, that's a good point.